I told you, I can't pay the phone bill. I spent all my money on that Beach Boys stuff. There's no extension for good vibrations. Guess I have to kiss my landlines goodbye. They suggest I get something called a smartphone, but I don't know what that is. So today I thought, let's think about covers. Every musician or group often does covers. Songs that are maybe popular at the time or older songs they want to bring back. And different groups and different people kind of have different views on covers. The Beatles, for example, did many covers at the start of their career, but then little to none by the end. Groups like CCR kind of peppered their covers around, one or two on every album or almost every album. And other groups like Gary Lewis and the Playboys relied very heavily on covers, where they were used to kind of fill out LPs or to be B-sides. With the Beach Boys, as with everything else I suppose, it's not that simple. I don't know. But I thought today we'd talk a little bit about Beach Boys cover songs. Because the Beach Boys did quite a few, and as it turns out, there's a special release from 2006 that doesn't seem to get talked about too much. I thought it would make a good subject for today. So when it comes to covers, the Beach Boys have many popular ones. Barbara Ann, of course, being the most popular cover the group ever did, and people even forget that it's a cover and that they didn't do it first. That kind of thing. And the Beach Boys' style of doing it has rubbed off on other groups like The Who and whatnot. Their second most popular one, this is actually a British copy, Rock and Roll Music, the Chuck Berry classic they redid in the 70s, one of their few successful 1970s singles. It didn't have many. Some of their covers were successful in their day, but they're kind of forgotten now, like their 1978 version of Peggy Sue. Steve Lewis at the Beach Boys' basement has a great video about the Buddy Holly craze of the late 70s and how no doubt the Beach Boys did this to capitalize on that trend. But still there are things that might not be considered covers but could be. Think traditional songs. Cotton Fields, Sloop John B., Christmas carols, The Lord's Prayer, things like that that are sort of covers, but as they're also much older songs that you could kind of say, well, not really, they're more like arrangements. I don't know, that seems like a music semantic term, and I'm certainly no musician, so I shouldn't pass judgment there. And of course there are several partial covers the group did, taking an existing melody and writing new lyrics. Notably everyone's favorite early 70s tune, Student Demonstration Time, which is a rewrite of Riot in Cell Block No. 9. Or Their Hearts Were Full of Spring, the romantic a cappella classic, became A Young Man Is Gone, an ode to James Dean. And there are others too, like the Christmas version of Peggy Sue. But the point is, there's a lot of covers in the Beach Boys' history, and they go all over the place with them. Albums, I guess really the only true blue cover album is Beach Boys' Party, but they were done, the covers were done acoustically, and mostly for laughs. Some more serious than others. This is the album, of course, that produced Barbara Ann. We also have the group covering their own material, as well as other artists' material, things like Stars and Stripes. Someday I have to do a video on Stars and Stripes because it kind of occupies a weird gray area in the group's history. And it's one of those things you either love it or hate it. And of course the group did both new and old songs even earlier than that on Laden, Hawaii from 1967, which wasn't released in its entirety till 2017. We'll come back to Laden, Hawaii later because that's important for our discussion today. But a lot of things going on, and my next episode in my Greatest Hits series, the 10 Years of Harmony episode, is taking a very long time because there is a lot to say about this album. I might even split it in two because 10 Years of Harmony has a very complicated history and release, and I want to do it justice because it's one of my favorite Greatest Hits packages. So I thought today we'll look at something a tad different, and we'll talk about 2006's Covered by the Beach Boys. So a very boring word art cover that is basically matched on the back. Open it up. I like the white on black CD, that's pretty cool. And there's a little booklet. Let's look at that booklet. You open it up, a track list and copyright dates. Not all the songs have copyright dates, and some are listed as 2001, others listed as the year of the song. With covers, I could definitely see the release history and the copyright and the rights and stuff all being very confusing. That's why there's probably only a handful of songs on here. And then some more releases. This was put out through, I believe, EMI Special Markets and Sterling Entertainment. I had to double check that. I wanted to make sure I got them in the right order. These are kind of like little compilations on this side of the leaflet, and then it turns out this is part of a series. You can see several other artists here. Johnny Cash, Willie Nelson, Linda Ronstadt, Otis Redding, all of whom apparently had little cover collections, and other artists have cover collections too, like CCR for example, where they compile a lot of their different releases into one handy-dandy little album. So in 2006, this would have been extremely interesting just for being kind of a career-wide sampler, because this does cover quite a bit of ground. It does have some very eclectic choices though. For example, nothing from Beach Boys' Party or Stars and Stripes are used, despite those being the kind of obvious cover albums. So let's dig in and see what we got. We actually start off with a song that has remained a fan favorite and part of the live set. Get these singles out of the way for you. A little number called California Dreamin'. Here's my single copy, B-side Lady Liberty. California Dreamin' was a reasonably successful single, peaking about number 57. It was released on the Made in USA double LP. You can see it on the hype sticker there. This has come back into favor for its use in Stranger Things. It's a cool cover of the song, kind of dark, apocalyptic, and it's odd that they would start with what's really the newest track on here. Maybe they figured they could capitalize on some of the success, starting with the newest thing first, even though it was 20 years by the time this came out. But, you know, kind of a strong start. Usually it's saved for the end or near the end, but I kind of like it at the beginning. The second one on here, from the Today album, I'll take these out of the sleeves, you can see them a little bit better. From the Today album, here's the cover of Bobby Freeman's Do You Want to Dance, with Dennis singing lead, next to Barbara Ann and Rock and Roll Music, the most successful cover of their career. Very energetic, still in the live set today, often done as a tribute to Dennis. Really fun song. It does kind of run counter to California Dreamin', which is very produced and very moody, but that's okay. Next on the list, Keepin' the Summer Alive LP from 1980. They used their cover of School Days. Keepin' the Summer Alive had a very complicated history, and I talked a bit about this in my 4th of July video, and it really could have been their last album. It started as a collection of classic rock covers. The only one that was kept and ultimately used was School Days. It's a good cover. It's the same mix from the LP. It's not the single mix. We'll talk more about that in the next episode, the hit series. We talk about 10 Years of Harmony. Not often do we see tracks from Keepin' the Summer Alive on compilations either, besides maybe Going On. So it's nice to see it here, and they do a good job with it. They kept it in their live set longer than any other track from the album. Then we have probably the quirkiest thing on here, their cover of Walk On By, the Burt Bacharach song. Brian Wilson, greatly admired Bacharach, wanted to do this cover. This is only about 54 seconds long. It's basically just a piece of the song. It was first released as a bonus track on the Friends 2020 album 2-pack. It's a nice, I guess, partial cover. It's not really the full song. Brian sounds great, and the group does some good backing vocals. In 2018, a longer version was released on the digital collection I Can Hear Music, and that one is about a minute longer, has an instrumental piece at the beginning, and it has a little bit more of Brian talking, like in studio, at the end. It's really weird to have this little song snippet here, but it is nice, and it was probably included mostly as like a rarities enticement, you know, to get people to buy, more people to buy this if they weren't familiar with it or wanted it for their collection. Then we have Come Go With Me from the Del Vikings. This was released in 1978, but it didn't catch on until it was released as a single for 10 Years of Harmony, and indeed it was a huge success, and one of the few things that went well for the Beach Boys in the early 80s, and will forever be associated with 10 Years of Harmony instead of the original album it was released on, the MIU album. We'll talk more about Come Go With Me in the next episode of the Greatest Hits series when we cover 10 Years of Harmony. And we have from the concert album, Johnny Be Good. I'm going to put this one off to the side for a moment because there's actually two different songs from concert on here. When we get to the second one, we'll come back to Johnny Be Good. So just put that aside for a minute, and we'll see what we got there. After Walk On By, Come Go With Me, Johnny Be Good, we have from 1976, Palisades Park from the 15 Big Ones album. 15 Big Ones gave them the rock and roll music cover that I mentioned earlier that was a big hit for them, but they didn't use that here. They opted with Palisades Park on the B-side there, or side 2 I guess, instead. I love their cover of Palisades Park. It's perhaps my favorite cover the group ever did. That being said, a lot of Beach Boys fans don't like it because they think it's too slow, but I actually like that they slowed it down. But it's odd that they would choose Palisades Park, because half of 15 Big Ones is covers and half is original. Very odd. I'm not sure why they chose that one. I'm glad they did, though. It deserves a reappraisal, and I think it fits well on here. After Palisades Park, we have Al Jardine's perhaps magnum opus, their cover of Then I Kissed Her. So doing kind of what the Beatles did, taking girl group songs and rewriting them for boy groups, Al Jardine absolutely owns Then I Kissed Her. He does a fantastic job. And this song has kind of an odd release history because it was released as a single several years later in Europe to massive success. One of their biggest hits of that time. And so it's nice that it kind of has lived on, I think more so dripping down through that success than being just an album cut here on Summer Days and Summer Nights. But I really like it. The lyric rewrites never come off as awkward, and Al Jardine does a very nice job on it. So it's nice to see it here, and one certainly that many people would recognize immediately because it's just such an iconic song. Then we have The Wanderer. So back to the concert album. So there are, two concert album tracks on here. My big beef is that they aren't together. They're spaced apart, and it's so weird. And they come out of nowhere. Nowhere on that album package does it say that these are live versions. Most compilations avoid listing the tracks as live, which I always thought was kind of strange, because you kind of want to know, because there's just this random screaming that comes out of nowhere of the audience. Both are good covers, but that being said, I don't know that they fit in really well on this release because they're quite old, and they're from kind of a different era of the group than most of the other tracks. Some, like Then I Kissed Her and Do You Want to Dance, are kind of timeless, but The Wanderer and Johnny Be Good definitely feel like products churned out for the teen set in the mid-60s there. So I don't know. It's nice that they included it, and this album was a huge hit in its day, the first live album ever to reach #1. But at the same time, it's like, I don't think the live ones really fit here. After The Wanderer, we go back even older to another cover that feels kind of out of place from the very first Beach Boys album, Carl Wilson and David Marks on Summertime Blues. They do a good job on Summertime Blues. I believe Eddie Cochran did that song first. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I gotta say, too, for both having puberty voices, they actually managed to do a nice job on it, and Mike does kind of the low parts of the vocal. It's a good cover, and a song that the Beach Boys occasionally revisit or tinker with. I know Mike Love did it for his 12 Sides of Summer album. But, it's kind of odd here, but I like that it's not put next to something that was quite new at the, or, not quite new, but newer at the time, like California Dreamin'. Going from that to Summertime Blues, that would have been a very strange jump. I don't think that would have worked. And then we have two more tracks, give us an even dozen. And these two, put them back now, were part of the Laden, Hawaii project. Someday I'm going to do a video on Sunshine Tomorrow. We'll talk all about Laden, Hawaii and the release of Wild Honey and all that jazz. But Laden, Hawaii was kind of live in studio. These very stripped down, basic covers, the group doing a lot of harmony and, accompanied by maybe an organ or just a few instruments. Kind of the opposite of those big Phil Spector style productions that had been popular a couple years prior. And there are two songs from Laden, Hawaii that were released before anything else from that album on 1983's Rarities. Someday we'll talk about Rarities. The two songs from these 1967 sessions that were on this record were the Beatles, With a Little Help from My Friends, and the Box Tops, The Letter. And so they took those two and they round out the end of the CD. So we end with the letter and with a little help from my friends. They hadn't been released that I'm aware of, at least in the US, since 1983 on that record I just showed you, so it was good after over 20 years to have them again here. They are kind of odd choices for a closer, but at the same time, I don't doubt they're probably what sold this record, this CD I should say, more than anything else because they were so hard to find at the time. Nowadays, of course, we get them on Sunshine Tomorrow, but really nice to kind of have them here. I know certainly when I started collecting, this was what I had in my collection to kind of represent them. So that is Covered by the Beach Boys. Apparently, EMI and Sterling's considerations for Beach Boys covers they felt fans needed to have. Again, it's odd they didn't go with the really obvious ones like Barbara Ann and Rock and Roll Music and some of the traditionals like Sloop John B. or Cotton Fields. They went with some of the oddities and rarities. I like that as a collector. I don't think it would be as appealing to a new fan. But hey, pretty cool stuff. I thought that would be a nice little treat for today. My Stacko Tracks video did really well, so I thought I'll do another kind of little quirky album as I'm prepping my big video or videos for this release. So please, in the comments below, list some of your favorite Beach Boys covers, or even songs that other artists have covered that you really like, that, you know, maybe we think it's the original artist, but they're actually not, they're covers. And please do leave a comment about this release if you have it or if you've ever heard of it, and anything on Party, Stars and Stripes, or anything else I showed you today. Always love hearing from you, and we've got some great discussions going, some of the comments in the other videos. And be on the lookout for my 10 Years of Harmony video, which hopefully won't take more than a couple weeks to get online. Until then, my friends, thanks for stopping by. Please leave a like. I'll see you next time. Thank you.